We'll go through roll call. We'll call this meeting to order. Anaskevich.
Here.
Gippin. Here. Peoples. Here. Lewis.
Here.
Castle.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Boyd. Here. Mr. Costa and Miss Reed will not be in attendance on this evening. Moving to the next item on our agenda will be the review and approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll take a vote to accept to approve those minutes. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples? Yes. Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Awesome. Now we're at the third item on our agenda, which are public comments. Public comments are 3 minutes per person, totaling 30 minutes. If there are any public comments, you can come and give them at this time.
I'll
Go ahead.
Pasolette. Good evening.
It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's a blessing for me to be alive. You all probably know me from speaking at the city council meetings. I came here this evening to address the issue of racism and gender issues. I've been discriminated against because I'm not white and because I'm not a male, and my matters were never addressed by the police in Cleveland, Ohio. It's not Akron. I have no issues with Akron at all. I love the police chief here, as a matter of fact. But I came so maybe I could give you some ideas and suggestions on how really to help people. I have a current protection order. I had a previous protection order that meant nothing to anybody. I fled with my 4 children to another state in the middle of the night, and rumors were spread about me across state lines, and instead of someone embracing me, I was held hostage and my children were stolen from the school and from my home with the police, using the police. My complaints with the police in Cleveland never got routed anywhere. Rape reports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a list of some of my police reports, felonies and misdemeanors, that never got addressed by Cleveland police. The Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas and the United States District Court refused to hear my matters because I'm not white and because I'm not male. And I said this to say that now my children all of them have criminal records. And the person who did this to me, one of the people who did it to me, said they thought I was in the mental health system, which I was not, and I still am not, and messed up my life across the borders. I've been displaced now for 20 years as a result of it. And instead of doing something retaliatory or negative, I began building. And I had asked you prior to this meeting, Ms. Donzella, if you all have voter registration forms. Because I believe once people's voices are heard, then the violence can come down a snippet. And once people's voices are heard, they won't be afraid of the police, and the police won't be afraid of the people. But I still, even today, am violated because I'm not white and because I'm not a male. There are multiple organizations across this nation, and not one woman's organization has embraced me. Not one police investigation has been done on my behalf. And this is a smaller town, and I don't want what Cleveland has done to me to happen anywhere else. I told Ms. Donzella, I'm running for president of the United States right now for 2024. My ballots were destroyed in elections. I was beat up and tortured and thrown into jail a month before the 2008 election and given a suicide blanket told to kill myself. But I'm not reactive, I'm proactive. I'm blessed. I have my grandchildren, 2 of them here with me this evening. Because I want you all to know that there is hope and there are options other than what's been presented. And I'm a victory story. I'm a testimony that your faith will keep you, but we have got to pull together. And I am a pastor. I do a lot of things. The Cleveland Plain Dealer calls me the political preacher, but I pray that we can get past the racial issues and the fact that I am a female who has had a very, very, very powerful voice, and I do make a difference. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Apostolette. Reverend Joyce Penfield.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for having this public comment time. I am one of the 5 initiators of what became Issue 10, the Charter Amendment, and I have kept really faithful in partnership with the NAACP because I'm in the Criminal Justice Committee, and I've kept very faithful because I canvassed for about 45 hours for Issue 10 as a pleasure to know the city and to know the people in the city better, since I've only lived here 4 years. And as we follow this, I wanted you to know also that after the murder of George Floyd, and I had been here just a few months at that time, a group of us in the Interfaith Social Justice Group, an interfaith and interracial group in Akron, a small group, began to work together to do what we could do to address policing locally. We formed, that came as a result of a vigil that we worked on for 2 months and developed relationships among about 27 of us during that time. And we developed 3 committees as a result of that, that grassroots stuff that began. One committee was called Minority Accessibility and Accountability Committee. It focused on policing. Another one was focused on sheriffs. A third focused on the community and how we could work to support the empowerment of the Black empowerment in the community and work in partnership and work pastorally primarily. The first one that I mentioned, we actually had a draft of a kind of a plan of successful things that we might want to ask for in our policing improvement. We spent 2 years, once a month, meeting together and growing into other people of different professions, lawyers and pastors, et cetera. And I have that with me. We also engaged Governor DeWine and Attorney General Yost, hoping that we could work on a certification of police at a state level, where police would be licensed just like teachers, and it would be a standard, and that standard wouldn't allow police, bad police or corrupt police, to go from one place to another, and would uphold policing. So I'm sharing that with you just to let you know that there has been community work going on, and that in some occasion I've been paying attention a lot here, and I noticed the focus, rightly so, because that's what we have in the Charter Amendment, which I always go back to because last a lot of legal language, and sometimes the details I get snared in. There's been a lot of attention here on the systems of complaints, but I don't think what's being asked is for you to be able to handle complaints, but rather to create a system in which that would be a just way of handling. And I also wanted just to point out, and I'll be working more on the second one. At the beginning is the one that I'm really focused on, the police community relations. That includes a lot of the stuff that our draft of the Interfaith Social Justice Group had, which has to do with required de-escalation training, required training to help with mental health issues, and required training of anti-bias. I understand that may not be your particular mandate, but I don't want it to get lost as we move along, so I'm reminding us of this. I think this is what we will be taking to the mayor. And just on a second basis, just want to share support and let you know that you don't have to do everything in one day. I'm concerned you're going to burn out, quite frankly, because so much passion. I'm just really impressed by the passion and the dedication of each and every one of you. But I don't want us to have people start dropping out because their lives can't be managed anymore. So please feel free, it's just me, one person suggesting, to go methodically, but to go at the pace that your lives can handle it, so that it can be done right. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow. This has existed for quite a while. A lot of us in the community are really anxious about it because of really highlighting through the death of Jalen, but there were other deaths before Jalen, some really awful ones I've learned about. So we wanna show the state that Akron can do this, and it has to be done locally. The state is not moving in that direction, and the country will take a long time to move in the direction of improving police-community relations. So it's our task, and I want you to know that we are supportive of you in that work, and we are also trying to help people be patient in the sense of knowing that you are on task, and you have to have time to be able to meet and do the work. I heard that in a meeting that I missed that you had considered alternating weeks. Maybe doing committee work one week and meeting together one week. I personally think that's really a smart idea. When I was a pastor, I found that meeting once a month, every other month, every other week, we just ended up doing the same thing and getting less done. So we had 1 week in which we all came together and 1 week in which we spread out to our committees. Just an idea to support also. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Penfield.
Reverend Joyce, I wanted to tell you this. Thank you so much, first of all, for the work that you've done as far as getting issue 10 on the ballot. And I know you personally. I know your story. I know what you've done, and I thank you for your remarks and your comments because they are affirming and reassuring for us as a board. And two, if you have a copy, we would love to have a copy of some of the work that's already been done. And see how that fits in with us, but also our community engagement subcommittee. So if you have an extra copy for us, we'd love to have it.
I don't tonight.
Okay.
But I can send one by email.
Yeah, you have my email.
To you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make sure it gets where it's gotta go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
No, no one else.
All righty. Thank you for all of the public comments that came forth. For our independent auditor's report, he is still out.
I got it. I have it. Yes, first of all, Phil had surgery yesterday, and so if we could all wish him our best that he recovers. Wish him a speedy recovery. Until he does get better, I'll be doing the independent police auditor report. I'm in contact with him on a regular basis. So I have a report for today, and I'll just get started. Some of it's very interesting, and then some of it's actually, well, it's all pretty interesting. So I'm going to start with Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati first, and then I'll trickle down to Akron. So he was able to gather information from Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus boards, and from the Akron Law Department Assistant Law Director. So I'm going to go through all of those. Regarding receiving redacted investigation materials from complainants, Field consulted Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland COPD boards to learn how they do their work with respect to complaints, and he learned the following information. The Columbus board has 8 investigators, plus staff, including 1 secretary. Their police department doesn't handle complaints anymore. The investigators review all use of force complaints and body-worn camera footage complaints. They then write the reports and forward them to the board. The investigators work for the city but are assigned to the board, okay? Their budget is $1.2 million and will increase as staff increases to 15 individuals, including another secretary for the board. Currently, the board has one secretary. Both Columbus and Cleveland are under dissent decrees, so their boards can pretty much do what they want with respect with how complaints come in and how they're handled and that type of thing. Okay. Cincinnati also has their own use of force and body-worn camera investigators. Akron. Akron cannot have their own investigators because the auditor's position, quote, was not written up that way. Therefore, Phil is our only investigator. However, according to Mike Defferbach, the assistant law director under the Civil Rights Division with our Akron Law Department, we can now start receiving citizen complaints, use of force complaints, and body-worn camera footage from our auditor. With that, however, we will also be susceptible to having our emails and other electronic private conversations subpoenaed regarding any cases that we might review. Okay, so the question is, and this is just coming from me, this is an I question, do we need to visit this issue of investigators down the road as we look at staffing up our auditor's office? So that's the end of the report, but I have one more note. And this is just something that we may need down the road for one reason or many reasons. Phil also spoke with Councilman Russell Neal, and he's going to present to the council to see if we can have, if they can somehow set up Zoom for us, if we would need to have some type of Zoom set up in this building for us for one reason or another. Like if people are off-site but still want to participate in meetings. So he's supposed to be looking at that. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Ms. Aniskevich. Mr. Gibbon, did anybody have something?
Ms. Richards, go ahead.
So we can receive everything unredacted? Is that what the bottom line to that is? Is that what they said?
That's according to Mike Defferbach. We can receive the information for citizens' complaints, use of force, and body-worn camera.
Unredacted?
As far as I know. Yes, it's taken them several weeks to get back with us. That was the original question about the redaction of the complaints. So it's taken them several weeks to research this on their own as a law department. So I wouldn't think that they're giving us this information and the issue is still the same.
Yeah, I personally don't care if it's redacted or not. I just know it's a lot of work to redact information.
Yes, it is. It is a lot of work.
That was my only question about that.
But it would still come through the auditors, through the auditor. And, you know, again, like I said, we're staffing up our auditor's office, so that's something that.
And my conversation with Eve Belfance, who's in the law department, who runs the law department, my conversation with her is looking for a place where we can take these complaints and information, and that is accessible to us as a board. And so that has become the conversation that we're having. So they're trying to construct the technology so that we can do that, so that there's access for us, not just the independent police auditor. So that way we can also have access to these complaints so we can look through them and read them as well. Anything, Mr. Gibbon?
Oh, I know there's been conversation about staffing, so I think your question's a good one. I mean, I think it's down the line. I mean, we need to get ourselves fully staffed up and see where we are. Plus, of course, we still need to define, you know, what our role is going to be with complaints. But I wouldn't be surprised if our staffing, you know, in the foreseeable future is, you know, more than what the charter's provided explicitly, and we might need to go to council about that. The only other comment, I guess, I don't know how to quite do this, but if the law department is providing advice such as what you read there, I'd prefer to see that directly so that it's easier to understand it firsthand than second or third hand.
See it in writing?
Yeah, I'd like to see
Yeah, I
what...
think we should.
Yeah.
I agree. But, you know, because he's in the hospital, that was the only way he was able to relay the information at this point. But I agree with that. I think all of this type of stuff should be documented.
Thank you. Before we go into our committee reports, I know that we have Deputy Mayor Tucker here with us. Ms. Lewis, I believe you reached out and invited?
I did.
Okay. Would you like to introduce?
You've done that, if he has a comment.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here to talk about the name badges for the police. I heard it was a discussion that was taken up here, and I'd like to give you a little bit of background on what happened and why. But first, you know, I've got 34 years experience in public safety, in the fire service in particular. And I've always wanted to have that special relationship with our citizens where we communicate openly and they can see what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and answer any questions, as well as be able to see who we are as we're taking care of them. It's something that's important, and it always has been. And in this particular issue, I've had multiple discussions with Chief Milet about it, and the bottom line is we've had some of our police officers that have been receiving threats. And when I say receiving threats, I've seen stuff on social media where they have been not just threatened themselves, but their families. And so, you know, we take an oath. We take an oath as a first responder to do whatever it takes to go out and help the public, you know, and putting our lives on the line is part of that. But when it comes to the safety of our families, that's not a part of what we signed up to do. So when these officers and their families are being threatened, we had to take that threat serious. So with that, what we decided to do was to, instead of having a name badge, to actually use our actual employee ID. And I know some people don't recognize what that is, but that actually identifies you better than a name tag. A name tag would typically have your first initial and your last name. This employee ID tag is going to have your specific ID number that identifies you over everybody else in the city. So there is one particular ID that I have that actually identifies me as the specific person versus everybody else in the city. So I understand that the public would like to see the name tags. I agree. I wish we did not have an issue now where we could do that. But the reality is we have officers and their families that are receiving threats, and we think it's better to not have those name tags on at this time because at least on social media, we've been seeing threats again. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
I have a question. Oh. So can you explain further what the tags will look like? So they won't have any names on them at all?
They don't have a name on them. They'll have a 5-digit number.
A 5-digit number. Okay.
And where is that located? So
It should be on their uniform. They should have.
right on the uniform?
It should be right on the uniform.
lapel?
Yes.
Okay.
And will it be written in white lettering or dark lettering?
Honestly, I can't say specifically what the letter color is. I just know it's on their uniforms.
Is that something that's going to be discussed? Because at nighttime, you can't see black on black or dark blue on dark blue, no matter what's written.
I can tell you, if you think about it, we're talking about potentially different color uniforms as well. So some people are going to have like a white shirt, and others are going to have like a dark blue shirt.
Okay.
Typically, most of our first responders that go out in the public have a dark shirt on, and it may have either white or gold lettering. but that may not be the case every single time. But it will be something that's identifiable, and if you are fairly close to that individual, you should be able to see that number.
That was my last question. Do you know what the sizes of the letters are going to be at all?
I don't have the exact size, but in close proximity, you'd be able to identify and see that number.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Director, a couple of questions. My understanding is that the profession of policing has always been dangerous. Has there been some qualitative change since the death of Jalen Walker that's brought about this change in policy in Akron about name identification?
Just a large number of threats toward officers and their families, and not specifically just the 8 officers that we're talking about that were involved in the shooting. We're talking about someone identified as an Akron police officer, period. So our officers are receiving those threats. They're seeing threats on social media. And again, we have to take it serious when it's them and their families.
And significantly different than it's been historically.
That's correct.
Right. Is this a decision that was made by the mayor?
This was a decision that was discussed with the mayor, and it was something that, actually before I even took the position of Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, it was deciding even prior.
I'm sorry, I said director.
Yes.
So this was your decision?
This was not just my decision, but I've had multiple conversations with the chief since that time.
Well, I'd like to, who actually was the decision maker?
I'm going to say the mayor was involved in the conversation. I was not involved in that conversation because, again, it was prior to my time in this position.
Has there been any discussion of bringing this matter to council?
I am not aware of that, no.
And if I'm understanding what you've said, there is no timeline on this. We should expect this is going to be policy going forward?
What conversations I've had with the police chief is this. We want to be able to return to having the names on the uniforms, but we want to do it in a way that's still safe for our officers. So when these threats die down, then at that point we'll figure when the right time is to go back to the names. This is not a permanent solution. This is temporary.
So based on the aftermath of the no bill regarding the Jalen Walker case, you're saying that those threats were intensified to the degree that they were recommended that the officers not wear their name badges. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying after the Jalen Walker incident period, we started receiving threats. Now, since the no bill, we've continued to have threats.
So when did the threat threshold intensify? I guess that's my question, because heretofore, police officers have always been threatened. You know,
They have, but just not to this degree. They have. So after...
So markedly, you're saying that...
I'm saying in the fall of last year is when the threats intensified to the point where we thought we had to take it serious. Any other questions?
Yeah, I imagine that, have you guys discussed this with your force, with your officers on your police force at all?
We have.
And they're in agreement with it?
What we did was we made it an option for them. Did not make it mandatory for them to remove their names. We made it an option that if they felt that they needed to for their safety of them and their families, that they could remove the name and put on the employee ID number.
Do you know that Deputy Mayor Tucker is there? Do you know what percentage of officers chose to keep the name tag?
I do not.
Chance?
I
Okay.
do not.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Deputy Mayor, have you had instances where there has been difficulty in processing a citizen complaint because of the absence of any identifying information?
I am not aware of that, but I can't testify to that. So there could have been, but if they simply would look at the ID number and write that down, that is more of an identifying number than your name is, because you could have 2 John Smiths or 2 Clarence Tuckers, especially since you have just the first initial and the last name. So frequently we'll have 2 people that have similar, you know, the first initial and the last name. But that ID number, will identify you specifically as who you are.
And has that been implemented?
Has
The
ID number?
ID number?
Yes,
And when was it implemented?
last fall.
Last fall. So that's been the case since last fall.
That's correct.
Bless you.
Do you know if there have been instances where officers on duty have had no identification, no ID number, and no nameplate?
I am not aware of it, but I can attest to it.
Okay. Has anyone made you aware of a complaint, formal or informal, from Ms. Jackson, who at one point spoke to this board about her allegations concerning things that happened to her?
I have not.
Okay. I can tell you that that was a part of what she told us. Again, only accepting what she said at face value, but that has been part of it. And I believe we also have been informed by the auditor that there has been some, and it may have, actually Deputy Chief Harding may have been here about it, there's been some difficulty determining who the officers were involved because they had no identifying information. But that is not something that's come to your knowledge?
It has not, but I will check up on that and get back with you.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
So one last question, Deputy.
Yes.
I'm going to assume that the general public is not aware of this numbers instead of names tag. So does Akron Police plan to do some type of public service announcement or announcement in the newspaper when this is how you can identify? Because everyone knows about the name tags being removed. That's general knowledge now throughout the city. So are you going to create a general knowledge stream of information about, instead of the name tags, you know, people can look at these ID numbers if they have issues? Is there a plan to do that, to disseminate that information to the citizens of Akron?
I don't know how or how much it was disseminated to our citizens, but I will follow up on it. I'll find out and follow up on it
Okay, thank you.
and get back with you.
If there's no further questions for Deputy Mayor Tucker, we want to thank you for your attendance and being here and sharing this information.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our agenda for our subcommittee report out. First, we have Mr. Gippen as far as our governance subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governance met yesterday evening. We think it was a very productive session. And Mr. Costa, Ms. Castle, and I worked closely over the draft of the rules, which, you know, we've had in one form or another since the first meeting, with the intention of hopefully bringing this board to the board for a vote. Probably it would be the first Wednesday in July, since we plan to vote on the authority resolution on the 28th. A couple things I want to say about the rules drafting. First, it's still a work in process. We have more to do. But what we've done is we have put the latest version of the draft, and it's in red lines so you can see the changes. But it's in the subfile for the governance committee within the team's general file. And it's set up so that, you know, certainly the committee members can all work on the document even if we're not meeting. But it's there if anybody would like to see it, just to know where we are with the progress. We'd ask you, don't change the document, but if you have ideas or suggestions, they'd be most welcome, but best communicated probably to me so we can consider them. But it is there for you to see where we are in detail, if you'd like to do that. A couple things I want to say about where we are with the rules, this draft. On reading the charter provision closely concerning the adoption of rules, we are of the view that the rules, the charter says the rules shall provide for procedures and operations of the board. We interpret that to mean that the rules only must be approved by council, but that the procedures that would then be adopted by the board pursuant to the rules would not need council approval, which of course would give us far more flexibility in adopting and implementing the procedures, since predictably we'll get stuff wrong and we'll need to change. But that is how we're proceeding, so that if you look at the draft, you will see many instances in which particular matters, such as making the annual report, are to follow procedures that would be adopted. And that's the structure that we've set up for this. And hopefully that will be, that's a correct reading of the charter, and will both give council approval of, in general, what we're doing. And it's still a very lengthy document, but would let us adopt our own procedures and change them without having to go to council. So that's an important way in which these rules are framed. Otherwise, I think you'll find that this draft as it now exists, probably on the subject of complaints, citizen complaints and investigations, probably could stay as it is, even if we determine that we have lesser authority than we might have. If it's determined that we have greater authority, you may remember variation A is lesser authority, variation B is more authority. If the board adopts variation B, more authority, we will have to do some more work on these rules. But I think with the discussion, we should be fairly well able to complete that work quickly. We may even have drafts, standby drafts, so that we could bring it back then in a week and then be able to get a vote and take those to council. So I think we're pleased with where we are with this. I hope you will be too. I hope this explanation gives you some insight as to where we're going with it. We'd be happy to answer any questions about what I've said to this point, if there are any. Okay.
Mr. Gibbon, when you say you need more work on B, B is my option.
Right.
What more work do you feel you need to do on that?
Oh, there'll be 2 or 3 provisions that will need to be written into the rules that will define to an appropriate level of specificity how we would proceed with dealing with complaints as they come in, and also separately use of force incidents, which are separate. So we would need some more detail to explain that, because that is something that I think appropriately it should be in rules, and the council would therefore pass on. But then more specific procedures about handling things would be procedures not submitted to council.
So I'm going to ask you this question. It may be a question that's more appropriate for our Human Resource Committee. Do you think we need a complaint subcommittee?
Opinion, yes. Well, whatever it's called, investigations.
Or, we need a subcommittee for...
Well, a subcommittee.
Because I would think that those two things would work in tandem.
Yeah. And we should talk, we may propose some change of terminology. We've used the term subcommittee, but the term committee may be the more proper term. But however you call it, yes, I think it's likely we're going to suggest an investigations committee, almost regardless of whether there's the greater authority or the lesser authority option chosen. Yes.
Yeah, I would think those two things would work well in tandem with one another.
The committee definitions, actually, Mr. Costa was working on that, and that's next week's topic.
Okay.
But I think that's likely to be one of the outcomes of it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to take a moment and just remind everybody that we would love any board members, any citizens to join the meeting, because I think when we were going through that first initial volunteering to be part of the committees, I mentioned that this was an area that was way out of my comfort zone, but I'm learning something every week, and I feel more confident as I'm being able to ask questions of Mr. Gippen and Mr. Costa throughout the process. So we want to welcome anybody who's interested, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to delve into this so that when the time comes and we're starting to make decisions, we're the most informed we can possibly be. So I would just encourage anybody to join us at those committee meetings.
And Ms. Castle has been contributing a great deal. It's not just passive by any means, and we've appreciated that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gippen, for your report and the work.
The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd leave this to the board, but the resolution concerning authority, remains on the table. If there is discussion or questions that anyone wants to bring up tonight about it as we continue considering it, we'd be happy to entertain that. Or if not tonight, and time is running, at any meeting, if before we act on it, to bring it back off the table so that it's fully discussed before we vote on it, not just discussed that night. I think everybody would be more comfortable about it. I mean, we are holding it to the 28th with the expectation that every member will be present that night. That's why that date was chosen, and hopefully that will be true.
Anybody have any questions over the two resolutions? Thoughts, comments? All right. Ms. Gippen, thank you for your report and for the work of your governance subcommittee. We are going to move Human Resources report out to executive session, so we won't do that right now, but we'll do that when we go into executive session. So I'll move to Ms. Lewis and Community Engagement Subcommittee report out.
So the community engagement had the opportunity to attend some community events this past weekend. We had positive interaction and made some connections as well. We were able to attend what they call the Hoop for Coop, and that was a twofold thing. It was a calling attention to health care issues with regard to African American men, and there were health care providers on that did screenings for blood pressure and some other issues, but then the other side of it was the basketball fundraiser, and then there was a second event that was held on Sunday, and Ms. Castle attended that, so she'll share with you about that if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I can second. The Hoop for Coop was a great experience to connect with members and just kind of share what we're doing as a board and invite them to join us. And I just wanted to thank Reverend Penfield. She invited the board to an event on Sunday that was hosted by the, I'm going to mess up this name, I believe it's Moms Calling for Action. Did I? Moms Demand Action. I had it in my notes, but I couldn't pull them up quick enough. And it was a wonderful event to highlight the Wear Orange National Gun Violence Prevention Awareness Week. They had a PowerPoint, and it just had great data and information about gun violence. There was a survivor panel that was very moving, and then some call to action so that people could get involved and make a difference. So I want to thank you for the invitation. I was happy to attend, and it was just really powerful to see those connections, gather that information, and start thinking about how that connects to the work of the board. So it was another great opportunity to learn and connect with some new community members as well.
And I don't know if anyone else within the community engagement attended anything. I don't think they did because I didn't get a report back. So those two events, and we were also able to sort of provide some relief. We had water to give to those in attendance, so they appreciated that. As for the organizational template for community engagement, we shared that with the Oversight Board on May 17th. However, there was not a motion to approve that, so we revisited that again today, and we were able to do some editing, so we'll present that on our next meeting with the subcommittee and to the board. We're looking at some dates and places to do our meet and greet event, and the common consensus for dates seem to be August and early September. And so we're looking at several places. One is the library, the other is the well, and the third is the 330 house. And so we'll get back with you and let you know about how we narrow that down after we go and do a tour this weekend. And then at our last Oversight Board meeting, there was a suggestion with regard to survey of citizens and getting their feedback. And so that discussion sort of started here, and so we formulated some questions that we still are in the process of tweaking. So we want to do that and get back with you, but it's my opinion that I heard some suggestions with regard to how we would do that, and I think the best case scenario to be able to get feedback that helps to protect those respondents' anonymity is to simply drive that traffic to our website and use a software program, namely SurveyMonkey, or I believe if you read the newspaper today and yesterday, the Center for Opinion and Marketing Research did an excellent survey with regard to the post-election and what those numbers look like, and they had a very informative but simple graphic to go along with that. So we may want to look at what that is and the cost factor there. I also wanted to be able to talk about, someone had mentioned a paper survey, and to me, paper just may not work well with us, number one, because we'd have to think in terms of scanning it and putting it in, and how does that data sort of go with having to use a software program? Are the numbers going to gel? And to me, it doesn't provide the responder enough time to look into how they feel about those questions. Is there a time constraint if you're using paper? Number two, the anonymity is not protected, and then where do those papers go? So I think if we want to think in terms of 2023, the best case scenario is to once again use a software program or a particular entity that already does that. And what was my third point?
Ms. Lewis, I have a question. Is that for the software program, is that for the citizens gathering information about the board?
No, that's for the survey that we mentioned on last week in the Oversight Board, and wanting to survey the citizens and find out from them, number one, do they know that they have the option of, filing a complaint with regard to police interaction, and how do they go about doing that? And so that whole case scenario, along with the idea of providing that information on the heels of asking them, do they know how, and do they know what to do, that kind of thing.
Okay, so just one other follow-up question with that. We do have to consider the fact that everyone doesn't know how to use technology. I know that seems...
Right, and so to answer that, the library provides that help, and there are other places that they can go and they can use the computer. For example, at the library, you've got a total of 2 hours to use the computers, and you can also take that laptop. You can sign out a laptop from the library that's equipped with a hotspot and internet. So that kind of alleviates that.
I'm wondering if we're going to have, it sounds like we're going to have to spend some amount of money to get this process done. And I wonder if our money would be better spent just telling people, just doing a campaign of, here's how you file a report, and we can pass out flyers, and we can put it on our website, and we can maybe do a PSA. Rather than asking if people know, just assume they don't.
Right.
And tell everybody.
Right. Well, that speaks to my point that I talked about on the 17th, and prior to that, I said we needed a two-sided glossy handbill that would say how to do that, and so that's another thing that we want to revisit. Is it feasible for us to do that? And then if we do a survey, are we only asking about that? And that was not my intent. There was some, I didn't generate the questions. I'm just speaking to the idea of conducting a survey. So is that what we're trying to arrive at? So that's why I wanted to bring it back to the board, because that was the question on the floor. Is that what we're asking of the people? And I'm asking the persons that generated the, and formulated the questions.
I'll answer that when we get them to questions.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Gibb.
Well, kind of, I think this follows on the questions, and I think that discussion was at the meeting I missed. But I think that there's two potential purposes of and I'm going to use quote marks, quote unquote survey. You know, one is genuinely to measure community awareness of the board, of the complaint process, in a scientifically valid way. If that is our purpose, I like what I was just hearing, that it should be done professionally. It is not an easy thing, and it's done with sampling so that you get a statistically valid result. You know, and if that's what we want to do, that's one thing. I frankly don't think we're capable of doing it ourselves. It may be, though, that we can operate on the assumption that almost no one in the community knows we exist or how a complaint should be filed. I think that's probably a sound assumption without surveying to determine that. The other potential purpose of a survey is more as a tool of education. There's a concept in political surveying, you may or may not have heard of it, it's called push polling. And you've probably all been subjected to this. But it's where you get a survey call and you've responded, and you're getting, the questions are loaded questions. In other words, you know, if you knew the candidate you know, had been married 25 times, you know, would that affect your support for the candidate? In other words, it's more to communicate to the respondent that information about the candidate than it is actually to get an answer. You know, so it may be that constructing our survey as a kind of push poll, you know, where in the way it asks the questions, it's telling them about our existence, and it's telling them about how a complaint can be filed in general. And this needs more committee discussion, but to my mind, that would be a more useful thing for us to do and not worry so much about the results we get, because they're not going to be scientifically valid. But it's just two ways of thinking about it, and that's why I had some issues about the composition of the survey. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that was my point. One of my points is, what are we trying to accomplish with it? And we structure it in that way. And what our answers are they going to make a difference to what we do? You know, when I do surveys, I like to know that they're going to make a difference. So if we're not going to do anything different, we're still going to flood the community with how to file a complaint. I just would like us to really examine that closely.
Yeah, for me, I don't think we have a starting point. That's why the survey needs to be done. We don't have data. Surveys is data collection, and we need to understand the data of what the public is actually thinking, actually saying, versus just going by this. I mean, that's why you saw the article in the paper. There was a survey that was done. And so the survey that was done in the paper and the article that you read is data that has been collected that shows where, I believe it's going to show where we need to be focusing some of our efforts versus, I think to Reverend Joyce's point earlier, with being so broad, it gives us a narrow view of where it is that we need to be going as an oversight board based on the feedback that we're receiving from the community. And so that's, to me, that's the essence of why you do surveys, this data collection. And I think that we need to begin to start to look at our data collection so that from this time to this time next year, we're able to compare and to say, hey, has this gotten better? Has some of the things that we're doing from an education perspective, from the community engagement subcommittee, is it working or isn't it working? But if we don't have a starting block, if you will, or a starting premise, then we won't know. We'll continue to be in a space of saying, well, we think it's working, but how do we really know that it is?
So our question,
if we don't have data to collect. So when this was introduced, that was the purpose behind it.
Well, then I think it should be done professionally, because the data
That's fine.
The data's
It can be done professionally,
Yeah.
but we need to do it.
Yeah,
So-
but that's how it has to be done, because we cannot do it.
That's fine. Okay.
may I say, may I, please?
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not saying that we don't need to do a survey. The question is, what do we need to be asking within that survey?
Well,
And so I
that's
think
what your subcommittee needs to come up with.
That's
And
what
then
he
we'll
said.
bring that
But
back
my-
to the,
but-
we'll
but
bring that back to the board.
But that's not what happened. What happened was 2 people generated questions.
One person did, and that was me.
Okay, so that didn't fly. So that's what I'm
It
saying.
didn't
because-
fly, and that's why I said, Ms. Lewis, it needs to go back through your committee. Y'all need to talk about it and come up with it, and then you present it back to the board.
Absolutely.
That was the conversation.
As opposed
Thank
to, no, sir, no, thank
Yes.
you. No, thank you. Let me make it clear. The questions were generated by 2 people. And so what I was saying was, we need to revisit the idea of those questions, and why are we asking those questions, and what do we want to get? What kind of feedback and what kind of question do we need to ask because there were 2 things that came before the Oversight Board. One was, why are the numbers that the independent police auditor was presenting is so different from what the police department? And so, based on that question that was on the floor last week, those questions that were generated would not get the answer. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm saying.
That's your opinion.
Wait a
You're
minute.
entitled to that.
Okay, so I am not saying that we didn't need to do a survey. We do, and we need to do surveys, plural. But the questions that were generated within that survey that you wanted to do using paper would not answer the questions that were asked. That's what I'm saying.
That's your opinion.
For a point of clarity. Now
Yeah, and that's your opinion, Ms.
Thank you.
Lewis, and that's fine. Yes, Mr. Gippen?
Probably the first thing a professional polling firm will do is work with the client, with us, as to what information are they trying to get, and then the professionals work on formulating the questions with the client, to make, to hopefully get it right. And that's what they do. So they would meet with whichever one of us, committee chair, whoever it is, to formulate the questions. But again, it's not, if we want to get real data, it's nothing we amateurs can do. And, there are several good polling firms in the region. I mean, whether the one that did the polling for the Beacon, there's a number of them, and I don't think they're terribly expensive. Any public body that goes for levies hires these folks. But that I think is how we should go if we really want data, and they will work with us to get the right questions framed the right way.
Because I don't think it was a good look for us to have paper surveys and go out into the community. I just want to make that clear. And so
I think you have. I appreciate it.
Let me finish, sir, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
And so I think it's appropriate, as Mr. Gibbons has suggested, and I suggested, that we use professionals. That's all I'm saying. And I appreciate you letting me speak.
Go ahead, Ms. Castle.
I just want to say, I definitely agree that going the professional route to get that valid and accurate data that we're looking for so that we meet the objectives. But I do disagree. I do think it has to be a both and. I think one of the things that we hear from, it has to be a both and as far as the delivery of. So I know we can go through a professional organization to create the survey for us, but I think something that we're hearing continuously in community engagement, in public comment, is the accessibility and removing the barriers. So I think offering it electronically, we hear that time and time again. For some people, that is their preference, but there are still several people who do like the pen and paper, and that's going to be more accessible for them, and I think that's something we have to keep in mind as we move forward with this, and was part of the discussion last week. So I just wanted to reiterate that point.
Once again, those professionals used phone, banks, and other means.
Understood. But to circle back to what Ms. Castle just stated, probably the majority of people have some knowledge on how to use electronic devices. So even if we did have to offer a second option, pen and paper, it would probably be a very small number of people that wouldn't be, and it wouldn't be difficult to slot them into the electronic devices or into the electronic system that's chosen. And the only other thing I wanted to say about contracting with someone, you're going to need to get at least 3 different Yeah, at least 3 assessments to see, it's not gonna be cheap, I don't think. So you really wanna research, options, pricing options, that's all.
So is the Community Engagement Subcommittee going to take the lead in finding 3 different options of firms that can man the survey?
Gladly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that all, Ms. Lewis?
That's all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Casa is not here for his budget and finance, and he didn't have anything to report. As he told me earlier, we're going to move into new business. Ms. Anaskevich, I see that the retreat dates are on the first thing on the agenda.
Yes, I'm going to appeal to Mr. Peoples. He's going to take over that conversation.
I almost have the list completed. I'm just short a few names. It is on. Just a few people I have to get hold of tonight. I don't think this thing is working. I think we really need this retreat, honestly, to get to know one another, because I think we're all getting too consumed, and we need to pump our brakes to get to know one another, because we're forgetting what we're here for. We're not computers. We're people. The citizens of Akron put this together on the ballot for a reason. They don't want a bunch of people here spewing out a bunch of stuff that they don't understand. They want to keep it simple. And we need to keep it simple, not technical. This is supposed to be a board for the citizens, not for us. That's why they call it the Citizens Police Oversight Board. It's not our board. It's the citizens of Akron. It's their board. And we need to remember that, because as I sit here, I don't say much, but I'm going to say it tonight. We've all gotten away from why we are here. It's too technical. There's a time and a place for everything. And we can do our jobs, but we also got to remember we're working for the city of Akron. Well, scratch that. The citizens of Akron. That's why we're here. And we have to make ourselves accessible to these people in this city. Not worry about all this stuff. I like to keep it simple. That's the kind of person I am. I'm a retired police officer, okay? We all bring some uniqueness to this board, okay? I like to keep things simple. Okay, so this retreat, we definitely need this, because we all need to unwind, because I think we're all wound up too tight, honestly. And if you're wound too tight, you're not going to get anything done. We're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, week after week. These people out here in the audience, they represent a small fraction of Akronites. They go back and they talk. If they see us arguing amongst ourselves and we're not accomplishing anything, they're going to spread the word in the community. They don't trust us. I think we heard that in weeks past. How can they trust us? Point taken. This is what I'm talking about. We can't be wrapped up in this paperwork all the time. They understand we're getting started. I'll make it quicker, Kemp. I'm gonna
You're well said, Mr. Baker.
All right.
You've built up a lot of inventory.
Oh, believe me, I have.
Go ahead.
And I'm like a volcano. I'm gonna blow it tonight.
Sir, please.
Okay, so these people here, I thank you all for coming. And I want you all to trust us, and I want you to spread the word. Let the community know that we can be trusted and we will be trusted. We're not here to protect the police department. We are here to make sure justice is served, period. Now, some of you may say, well, you're a retired police officer. How can you say that? Easy. When I was a police officer, I was real. I didn't let the badge go to my head. I go to the bathroom like everybody else, the same way. I went to work to help people, not to hurt people, not to misuse my authority, not to, as they say, jam them up. If you have to think that way, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need that badge. You bring injustice to that badge. I'm insulted when I hear people say the things they say when they come in here, how they were mistreated by the police. That hurts my heart. I did 21 years as a police officer, and I served proudly. And I would do it again because I did nothing wrong. If I couldn't help you, I would tell you I can't help you, but I would find somebody who could help you. So what I'm saying today, thank you all for coming. Trust us. Give us a chance to prove ourselves. It's going to take a while. This stuff is not easy. It's like a child learning how to walk. We're going to get up and we're going to fall on our butts many a times, but we're going to get up. And we might need you, we will need you to pick us up. And if you know something, say it, bring it. Bring as many people as you can through that door. I invite people every day that I work with at Metro. I want people to come in here and tell their story, because without their story, we don't know. I don't want to hear it from just the police department. I want to hear it from you. You're the victim. I'm a victim. We're all victims. The justice system in this country stinks, and it needs to be fixed. Because you wear a badge and you have a gun does not make you better than anybody else. You chose that. Respect it. Respect the people that you represent. I'm done preaching for the night. I'll get back to this. I need information from Chairman Kemp, Ms. Lewis, and Ms. Reed when she comes back. And I don't know, are we including Phil on this also? No? Okay, I'll take him off.
Can I interject?
Sure.
What we're looking, we want everyone to give Mr. Peoples at least 2 dates in June and July and even August, because when I contact the organizer, I don't want to have to just give him 1 date to work with. I want to give him an option of dates to work with. So if you can choose a Saturday, 2 Saturdays that you're free from.
And I've got them on the paper here.
Okay.
And I'll share that with you.
Okay.
So we can put that on a calendar and narrow it down to the gentleman that you talked to me about.
Right, and once Mr. Peoples gets everyone's dates, then I will call.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples, I appreciate you. July the 15th and 22nd. That's the two.
Anything in June?
No.
Nothing in June?
No.
But July 15th and 22nd.
Yeah.
Write it down now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thank you for your comments. I really appreciate Mr. Peoples and your words, and it's convicting. So let me say this. Ms. Lewis, I apologize I shouldn't have responded to you that way or reacted to you that way. I didn't respond, I reacted. And so
I
for that, I want to
accept your
apologize to you. I want to apologize to the
accept your
citizens that are
apology.
here. And so thank you. And thank you, brother, for that word of conviction. That truly means a lot, and that's what we need. And so we have to model the behavior that we want to show and that we want to see in our city. So I want to do that. Online public comment form, who put that on?
That is me. So this is a tough act to follow. Next time, I'm going to put the retreat as the last order of business.
Well, he ain't talked since he said hello to me 2 months ago.
We got to move that next. I got to be a little bit more strategic.
Say that.
Mine is not as powerful and moving, but I do think it's important, going back to that accessibility piece. One of the items we talked about as a board is we have that paper public comment form for the citizens to sign up when they're here. I drafted up the same exact form, just in a digital format, that we can put on our CPOB webpage if we would like, so that people can sign up ahead of time, and then they can just join us and be able to step in when Ms. Anaskevich calls them. So then we could just provide that to Ms. Anaskevich. So if you, it is in the copy, and I also sent everybody a link just to review that. It's the same thing, but I think that would be really helpful to put on that webpage. And then on the same note as the webpage, we now have our minutes and our agendas are accessible on the webpage. So that's great news. So those will be uploaded every week to the CPOB webpage as well.
Is that in here? Is the link to the webpage in here?
The link to the webpage is not. So if you go to akronohio.gov and you go it's under government, there's a tab for Citizens Police Oversight Board. And that's that webpage where you can see our contact information. There's a link to the complaint form. We did get Phil's address. It was incorrect, and he requested at one of our prior meetings for that to be updated. So Ms. Marsh and her team have updated that. So that's correct. And then as of, I believe on Monday, the agendas and minutes will be up there as well.
Okay, so you talked just a little bit fast for me. So it's akronohio.gov.
Yes, ma'am. And then there's tabs on the top. You go to the government tab, and it's going to drop down, and then you will see Citizens Police Oversight Board as an option for one of those sub-pages
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Right, thank you, Ms. Castle. And two, I laid out on everybody just logo options for our Oversight Board. Just put an X by the one that you like, and we'll just take the majority of which one people like, and we'll go from there. And we got to wait for 2 other board members to get here, because I want to get their input. So hopefully, when we come back on the 28th, everybody should be here, and we'll take, the majority of whatever you all like, and just put an X in the square.
Can I put a wrench in that? Can I put a wrench in that a little bit? So I've done logos a gazillion times and a gazillion ways. We really need to have something that will go on a white background, because if you don't, you're going to have bad ink stuff. You're going to have, you get a white tablecloth and you got a black blob so if you could have whoever did this redo it with a white background, and you can leave the colors, change the colors, do whatever you want for the fonts, but the background has to be white, or we're going to be upset with ourselves in the long run.
So can you still vote without the white background, or you can't?
You could. It might be a little bit, like this bottom left one, I think is really difficult to read. And I also wondered if we wanted to have Akron on here somewhere.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can have the person put Akron underneath it somewhere.
That's my suggestion, that everything goes with a white background, and we add Akron somewhere.
So
That's
the
all.
acronym would be ACPOB? The acronym would change to ACPOB?
Or just having somewhere.
Well, I thought so,
that
but
were
you wouldn't
Akron.
change it it would still basically be CPOB.
Right.
But Akron might be below it.
Yeah.
Or beside it, or
Established in Akron,
something.
Ohio.
I would say Akron, Ohio,
All right.
just because, there are other boards in Ohio, so. Can I circle back to Ms. Castle one quick? Are these the forms that are going to be online here?
Yes, it's the last 2. So that's
Okay.
identical to that paper form that we have on the podium every week. It's the exact same.
Okay.
Thing right
Thank you.
there.
It looks
Yes,
very
ma'am.
nice. I like it.
Thank you. And then that way it'll, with the electronic copy, so every week when the optional portion where public comment, they can leave their name and contact information, and we've been creating a database for those that have been provided, so these will be automatically input to that database as well.
I have one more piece of new business. I apologize. Phil has brought to my attention that the office that he works in is not sufficient for two and certainly not sufficient for 3 people. And I'm wondering if you're okay with me approaching the city about a different office space for him to accommodate our staff.
I am.
All right. Before we move on, I do want to read an article that was in the paper. I think that one of the unique things that we get an opportunity to do as a board is almost being able to present from a community perspective, but also we want to be able to encourage when there is good policing happening. And so this article came out by Betty Lynn Fisher, and I'm just going to read it. It says, on Tuesday, Akron police spokesman Lieutenant Miller said, 33-year-old male was in crisis on the bridge, threatening to harm himself. Officers arrived, established rapport, used de-escalation techniques, and were able to convince him to come down. After about 40 minutes, the young person was 33-year-old male was then taken and transported to an area hospital for evaluation. I wanted to read that because I think something that we can all get behind is the importance of preserving life. And so I think it's important for us as a board to be able to present these type of things because I think we hear enough and we have enough hard things that are going on. And I'm not just talking about from a standpoint of police, I'm just saying in general. You know, things are hard. We know right now mental health is really hard. That's happening in our community. We have many of you work in the mental health field or have retired from it. And so to know that somebody didn't take their life because of a mental health situation or crisis, man, is really encouraging. And I'm glad that this was in the paper and it was reported on. So I just wanted to share that with our board, but also with the community. If you didn't see or read that article, I think it's important that that's something for us to be encouraged by. So that's it. Can I get if there's no more new business, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, before that, I think that, is there any other business of the Human Resources Committee?
She's going to talk about an executive.
No, is there any other business that isn't appropriate to executive session?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion. that we go into executive
Mr.
session.
Chairman, the motion needs to state the purpose. So, in alternative, I move we go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Do I got a second?
Second.
Anaskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peebles? Yes. Lewis?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Boyd? Yes. Thank you.
Did you want us to pass these back to you, or? Okay.
Well, I thought we were going to wait for the white paper.
Can I get a motion to remove from executive session? So moved. Can I get a second?
Second?
Roll call, Anaskevich,
Yes.
Giffen. Yes. Peoples.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Castle. Yes. Richards.
Yes.
Boyd, yes. And can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? So move on that. Second. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Anaskevich,
Yes.
Giffen. Yes. Peoples. Lewis.
Yes.
Castle. Yes. Richards.
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Enjoy the